On New Year's Eve, my nephew poured soda on my laptop and gave me the middle finger. My brother and his wife defended him. The next morning, I demanded they pay for it, and my dad gave them 48 hours to leave. All right, Reddit. Let me paint you the picture of how one spoiled little demon managed to nuke an entire family dynamic on New Year's Eve. My nephew destroyed my laptop. His parents defended him and told me I was being dramatic. So I showed them what dramatic looks like. Here's what went down. I'm 26 male, a graphic designer working remotely for a San Francisco creative agency while living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yeah, I know. Making California money while paying Michigan rent. Call it financial genius or geographic arbitrage, I don't care. I live with my old man Joseph, 62, because after mom died 3 years ago, somebody had to make sure he didn't turn into one of those hermits who orders everything on Amazon and talks to the TV. Dad's a retired high school principal, with 34 years of dealing with entitled little shits and their even more entitled parents. Also in the house, Diane, 60, Dad's second wife. She's a nurse who spent her entire adult life fixing broken things, which somehow translated into enabling everyone's worst behavior in the name of keeping the family together. Because nothing says family unity like letting little sociopaths run wild. Now enter the main antagonists. My older brother Brandon, 37, and his charming wife Jessica, 34. These two geniuses decided to chase some cryptocurrency investment opportunity in Berlin for 4 years. Spoiler alert, it went about as well as you'd expect. Turns out, disrupting traditional finance mostly just means disrupting your own bank account. When their revolutionary blockchain startup turned out to be an elaborate way to lose other people's money, they came crawling back to Michigan with their tails between their legs and their 11-year-old son Ethan in tow. It's just temporary, Brandon said, when they showed up at Dad's door with 3 suitcases and a sob story. Just until we get back on our feet. That was 9 months ago. And Jessica? Picture this. If a Karen and a LinkedIn influencer had a baby, then raise that kid on a steady diet of essential oils and Instagram wisdom. This woman had spent 4 years in Berlin calling herself an expat entrepreneur, while Brandon burned through investor money, and she'd convinced herself that made her some kind of worldly business guru. She spoke with this condescending tone like she was constantly explaining obvious concepts to slow children, name-dropped European cities in casual conversation to remind everyone how cultured she was, and had this habit of starting sentences with, well, in Berlin, The woman documented every meal on Instagram, called herself a mommy blogger despite having 12 followers, and used phrases like toxic masculinity and emotional intelligence as weapons whenever someone called out her bullshit. Real, I took one psychology class, and now I'm everyone's therapist energy. And Ethan? If Satan had a kid with a Karen, then raise that kid on a steady diet of participation trophies and 0 consequences, you'd get this little psychopath. The kid spoke English with this pretentious little accent he'd picked up, called adults by their first names like he was their equal, and had this dead-eyed stare that made you wonder if he tortured small animals in his spare time. Future serial killer vibes, if I'm being honest. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the 9 months of escalating bullshit that led to New Year's Eve, because context matters when you're talking about nuclear revenge. The first warning sign should have been when Ethan walked into our house and immediately started cataloging our stuff like he was planning a heist. Parker, why do you have so many monitors? Not uncle, or even just asking politely. Straight up interrogating me about my property like I owed him an explanation. Jessica, meanwhile, was taking photos of our kitchen for her Instagram story with the caption, Midwest vibes, our family time, Hasher blessed. Week 1. I came home from a grocery run to find this little shit rifling through my desk drawers. When I asked what he was doing, he looked me dead in the eye and said, I was bored. Like breaking into someone's private space was a reasonable response to mild inconvenience. When I told Diane about it, she said, he's adjusting to a new country. Give him time. Jessica's response was even better. Ethan is a kinesthetic learner. He needs to explore his environment to feel secure. Week 3. I'm working from home when I hear this weird scraping sound coming from the bathroom. I go check it out and find Ethan using my electric toothbrush to clean the grout around the bathtub. When I confronted him, he said, it works better than a regular brush. When I mentioned it to Brandon, he shrugged and said, kids are curious. At least he's being helpful. Jessica jumped in with, this is actually showing great problem-solving skills and resourcefulness. In Berlin, children are encouraged to think outside the box. Yeah, Jessica. Using someone's personal hygiene equipment as a cleaning tool is really thinking outside the box. Maybe next he can use my coffee mug as a toilet brush. That'd be some real European innovation. Week 5. I walked into the kitchen to find Ethan making himself a sandwich with ingredients from a deli tray I'd bought for a work video call later that day. Not asking permission, not even acknowledging that it might belong to someone else. Just helping himself like he owned the place. And I was the guest. When I told Jessica about it, she said, "I'll replace it later," and then launched into a lecture about scarcity mindset and how food restrictions can create unhealthy relationships with eating. She never replaced it, obviously. But the real pattern became clear in November, and that's when I knew this wasn't just adjustment issues. I've got this small office set up on the second floor. Nothing fancy, just organized enough to handle whatever design crisis comes my way. Two 4K monitors, Wacom tablet, color-calibrated display, the works. I made it crystal clear to everyone when they moved in. This room is off limits during work hours. Not a playroom, not a hangout spot, just my workspace where I make the money that keeps this household running. One Tuesday afternoon, I'm in a video call with my entire creative team, plus some executives from the client company. High-stakes stuff. I step away for literally 2 minutes to grab a glass of water. I come back to find Ethan sitting in my chair, spinning around while my camera is still on, making faces at my coworkers and clients. 12 people watching this kid treat my professional reputation like his personal entertainment center. I grabbed him by the arm and physically removed him from the room, then spent the next 10 minutes apologizing to people. The meeting was salvageable, but barely. When I confronted Brandon and Jessica about it, they said Ethan told them I'd given him permission to use the computer. A blatant lie, but they believed their little angel over their own family member. Jessica's response? "Parker, I think you need to examine why you're so threatened by a child's natural curiosity. This kind of aggressive reaction to innocent exploration suggests some deeper issues with control and masculinity. Because apparently an 11-year-old crashing my business meeting was innocent exploration, and my anger about it was a character flaw. Diane? He probably misunderstood. He's still learning English. The kid spoke 3 languages fluently. But sure, let's pretend he didn't understand 'stay out of this room.' That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with normal family drama. I was dealing with people who had decided their convenience was more important than basic respect. And they were raising a kid who thought other people existed for his entertainment, while his mom provided justification for everything he does. Thanksgiving should have been a warning shot. We had the whole extended family over. Dad's sister Patricia and her son Tyler, plus Diane's brother Robert and his wife Michelle. Patricia's always been the family truth teller, the kind of person who says what everyone else is thinking, but too polite to vocalize. Tyler's 28, works construction, and has exactly 0 patience for entitled people. Michelle, on the other hand, is one of those suburban moms who thinks children are precious angels who can do no wrong, especially if those children are related to her. Everything was going fine, until Ethan decided he didn't like the way the adults were talking, without including him in every conversation. His solution? Start throwing dinner rolls at people. Not playfully, not accidentally. Deliberately winging bread at adults who were trying to have a conversation. When Dad told him to stop, Ethan looked right at him and said, "You can't tell me what to do. You're not my dad." The entire table went silent. This was Dad's house, Dad's table, Dad's food. This little shit was throwing around while telling the homeowner he had no authority. Jessica immediately jumped in with, "He's overstimulated. It's a lot of people." But then she couldn't help herself. "Also, Joseph, you're using a very authoritarian parenting style. Research shows that children respond better to collaborative problem solving than commands." "Yeah, sure. Let's collaborate with the kid who's throwing food at people. Maybe we can form a committee to discuss the appropriate bread-throwing protocols." Michelle backed her up. "He's just expressing himself. It's healthy for children to assert their independence." That's when Tyler, bless his heart, looked at Ethan and said, "Kid, if you were mine, you'd be eating Thanksgiving dinner off the floor after I knocked you off that chair." Ethan started crying. Brandon got defensive. "Don't threaten my son." Tyler's response, "I'm not threatening him. I'm explaining what consequences look like. Maybe you should try it sometime." Jessica's voice went up 3 octaves. This is exactly the kind of toxic masculinity that creates violent behavior patterns in children. "Tyler, you're literally modeling aggression right now." Before they left early, Patricia said something that stuck with me. "That kid's going to run into someone who won't tolerate his bullshit, and when it happens, it's going to be brutal." I had no idea how prophetic that would turn out to be. December 31st, 2023. The whole circus was assembled under one roof for what was supposed to be a fresh start. The house looked perfect. Everyone was playing nice, waiting for midnight and trying to pretend we were a functional family. Dinner was this whole production. Prime rib, lobster tails, garlic mashed potatoes, asparagus, the works. Jessica had helped cook, which was her way of saying, "Look how domestic and helpful I am," without actually addressing the elephant in the room, namely that they'd been freeloading for 9 months while treating the rest of us like hired help. Everything was going smooth until my phone started buzzing. Critical design emergency at work. One of our biggest clients had just rejected the entire campaign we'd been working on for months, and they needed a complete rebrand by January 2nd, or they were walking. The kind of thing that makes account managers break out in cold sweats and start updating their LinkedIn profiles. I'm literally the only one on my team with access to the master design files for this project. When I say I had to handle it, I mean a multi-million-dollar account was basically fucked if I didn't. No pressure or anything. I excused myself, headed upstairs to my office, started pulling up the design files, and realized I left my external hard drive with all the backup assets in the car. So I head down to the garage, grab it, and start walking back upstairs. That's when I heard it. The sound of liquid hitting electronics. I rushed toward my office and found the door wide open. Not just cracked, wide fucking open. And there was Ethan, standing right next to my desk, holding an empty can of Coke, like he'd just finished performing some kind of ritual sacrifice. My work laptop, the one with 3 days of unsaved design work, the high-end MacBook Pro that costs more than most people make in a month, was sitting there with Coke dripping off the keyboard and pooling around the base. But here's the part that still makes my blood boil. When Ethan saw me standing in the doorway, he didn't look scared, didn't look sorry, didn't even look surprised. He looked satisfied, like he'd just completed a mission. This little psychopath had waited until I left, deliberately entered my private workspace, and destroyed my equipment with the kind of calculated malice you'd expect from someone 3 times his age. Then he did something that burned itself into my brain forever. He stuck out his tongue, gave me this smug little smirk, and then, I shit you not, calmly raised his middle finger at me. This was an 11-year-old telling his uncle to go fuck himself in his own house after destroying his property. Something inside me just snapped. Before I could think about it, I grabbed Ethan by the shoulders and shoved him away from my desk. I straight up manhandled this kid like he was a threat that needed to be neutralized. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I yelled, louder than I'd ever yelled at anyone in my life. "That's 3 days of work. That's my freaking livelihood." Ethan stumbled backward and immediately started crying. The real kind this time, with actual fear in his eyes. Then he ran out of the room screaming for his parents. I stood there staring at my dead laptop, knowing I'd just handed my family all the ammunition they needed to make me the villain in this story. But I also knew this wasn't going to be one of those boys will be boys situations. This was war, and I'd just fired the first shot. I walked downstairs with my dead laptop under my arm and called, "Ethan, you little shit." The whole room went quiet. Ethan was already behind Jessica, tears still streaming down his face, playing the victim card for all it was worth. "Parker attacked me!" he wailed before I could even open my mouth. "He grabbed me and pushed me." Suddenly, I wasn't the victim of property destruction. I was the grown man who'd lost his temper and put his hands on a child. Jessica immediately jumped into full mama bear mode. "You put your hands on my son? What is wrong with you?" But she couldn't stop there. "This is exactly what I was worried about. Parker, you're clearly dealing with some unresolved anger issues, and now you're taking it out on a child. This is textbook displaced aggression." Brandon stood up, chest puffed out. "Did you just assault my kid?" So I laid it out for everyone. Told them exactly what happened. The deliberate destruction, the middle finger, and yes, my reaction to it. No exaggeration, no justification, just the facts. "So you admit you put your hands on him," Jessica said, like she just caught me confessing to murder. "You shoved a child because of a computer," Diane added, her nurse voice dripping with disappointment. Brandon was nodding along. "I don't care what he did. You don't touch other people's kids. Period." Michelle immediately backed them up. "Violence is never the answer. That poor child is probably traumatized." But Patricia was studying the whole situation with sharp eyes. "What happened before Parker grabbed you?" she asked Ethan. Tyler leaned back in his chair. "Kid's playing the victim now, but what did you do to piss off your uncle?" That's when I pulled out my phone and showed them the evidence. See, I'm a design guy. I believe in documentation. I've got security cameras in my office. The footage was crystal clear. Ethan walking in with the Coke, standing at my desk for a moment, then deliberately pouring the entire can over my keyboard. Then turning around and giving me the finger when he saw me in the doorway. Then me losing my shit and grabbing him. I handed my phone to Jessica and watched her face as she saw the evidence. "See?" she said. like the video vindicated her. He destroyed your laptop, which was wrong. But look how you reacted. You're the adult here. Then she really got going. This video actually proves my point about your anger management issues. An emotionally mature person would have handled this differently. You're literally using a child's mistake to justify physical violence. Even with video proof, they were still defending him. That's when Dad, who'd been sitting at the head of the table through this whole shit show saying nothing, slowly stood up and walked over to watch the footage. He watched it twice, then looked at Ethan with the kind of expression that had made high school troublemakers wet themselves for 3 decades. "Ethan," he said in that quiet, authoritative voice, "apologize to your Uncle Parker." "But he hurt me," Ethan whined. "After you destroyed his laptop and disrespected him in his own house," Dad replied. Instead of apologizing, Ethan did something that shocked even me. He looked my father, the homeowner, the man who'd been feeding and housing his family for 9 months, dead in the eye and said, "No, he's mean and I hate him." Brandon immediately jumped to his son's defense. "Dad, you can't expect him to apologize when Parker assaulted him." I stood up and looked directly at Brandon and Jessica. "Time for some real talk. Here's what's going to happen," I said, keeping my voice calm but absolutely serious. That laptop was worth $2,800. It contained 3 days of unsaved design work that I now have to recreate from scratch. You have 2 weeks to replace it with the exact same model, or I'm pressing charges. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally settled on indignation. We don't have that kind of money, and we're definitely not paying someone who just assaulted our child. "I didn't assault anyone," I replied. "I had a human reaction to watching my livelihood get destroyed by your little demon." Brandon finally found his spine. "You put your hands on my son. That's the real issue here, not some laptop." "Some laptop?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's $2,800 of work equipment that your kid destroyed on purpose." That's when Diane decided to play peacekeeper. "Parker, honey, maybe if you apologize to Ethan first, we could work something out." "I'm not apologizing for being angry that my property was destroyed," I shot back. Michelle jumped in with her suburban mom wisdom. "Violence is never okay, regardless of the circumstances." Jessica was building up steam. "Parker, this entire situation reveals a lot about your character. You're more concerned about material possessions than the emotional well-being of a child. That laptop can be replaced, but the trauma you've caused—" "Shut the fuck up, Jessica," I shot back. She gasped. "How dare you?" Tyler, who'd been quietly watching this whole clusterfuck unfold, finally spoke up. "Lady, the only trauma that kid has is finally facing consequences for his actions." The battle lines were drawn. Me, Dad, Patricia, and Tyler on one side. Brandon, Jessica, Diane, and Michelle on the other. And in the middle, one little ass who was finally starting to realize that actions have consequences. Jessica wasn't done playing the victim card. "This is emotional blackmail. You're threatening us because you lost your temper." "No," I said. "I'm trying to force you to take responsibility for your kid's behavior." Brandon stood up and said, "We'll think about it. Think about it." Like acknowledging reality was optional. That's when Dad spoke again. "Brandon, Jessica, take Ethan upstairs. We'll discuss this further in the morning." After they left, Patricia spoke the truth everyone was thinking. That kid is going to end up in juvenile detention if they don't get their shit together. I went to bed that night knowing that New Year's Day was going to be very interesting. The next morning felt like the calm before a hurricane. Dad called us all into the living room before we'd even had breakfast. Ethan was sprawled across the couch with his Nintendo Switch, legs draped over the arm like he owned the place. Zero concern about what had happened the night before. Dad looked at Brandon and Jessica with the kind of expression that had made hardened teenagers confess to crimes they hadn't even committed yet. "After thinking it over last night," he said, "do you two believe your son did anything wrong?" Silence. Ethan kept playing his game. That's when my father decided to give everyone a practical demonstration in accountability. He walked over to Ethan with a slow, deliberate pace. Then he grabbed that Nintendo Switch right out of Ethan's hands and, without saying a word, "Hey, give it back!" Ethan screamed. Dad walked into the kitchen. We all followed, drawn by morbid curiosity and the sense that something irreversible was about to happen. Dad opened the sink cabinet, pulled out a hammer, and placed the switch on the counter. "Dad, what are you doing?" Brandon started to move forward. "I'm showing everyone what it feels like to have something you value destroyed by someone who doesn't respect you," Dad replied. Then he brought that hammer down on the switch. The sound it made, that crack of plastic and circuitry, was beautiful. Jessica screamed like Dad had murdered her firstborn. Oh my God, that cost $350. And Parker's laptop cost $2,800. Dad replied calmly. How does that feel? Ethan, who'd been watching his precious gaming device get pulverized, finally showed some real emotion. For the first time since this whole thing started, there was actual fear in his eyes. He started crying. That's not fair! You're mean! He wailed. I looked my nephew straight in the eye and, without saying a word, raised my middle finger. The look on their faces was priceless. But Dad wasn't done. Brandon, he said, you have 48 hours to either pay for Parker's laptop or find somewhere else to live. This house doesn't shelter people who refuse to teach their children basic decency. What happened next was like watching a nature documentary about cornered animals. Brandon and Jessica went full scorched earth, pulling out every manipulation tactic in the book. First came the guilt trip. How can you choose money over family? Then the victim complex. We're going through a hard time, and now Parker is threatening us. Then the gaslighting. Parker has anger issues. He physically assaulted our child. Jessica was in her element now, throwing around psychology terms like confetti. This is classic scapegoating behavior. Joseph, you're enabling Parker's toxic masculinity by supporting his violent response to conflict. But Dad had made his decision, and 34 years of dealing with entitled parents had made him immune to emotional manipulation. This isn't about money, he told them. This is about respect. That's when they played their trump card. Fine, Jessica said, but we're taking Mom with us. She agrees that Parker was out of line. Everyone turned to look at Diane. For a moment, I thought she might actually choose her moral principles over her need to avoid conflict. Then she said, I think Parker should be more understanding. They're both at fault here. Dad's face went completely blank. Then you can leave with them, he said. The next 2 days were like living in a war zone. Passive-aggressive comments, slammed doors, whispered conversations that stopped when I walked into a room. As the deadline approached, I started to wonder if I'd pushed too hard. Maybe I should accept partial payment for the sake of family harmony. Then I remembered the look in Ethan's eyes when he flipped me off. Some lines can't be uncrossed. 48 hours came and went without a check, an apology, or even an acknowledgement that they owed me anything. Instead, Brandon and Jessica spent the morning loading their car with righteous indignation and wounded pride. They'd found a temporary place to stay with Michelle and Robert. As they were packing, Ethan looked me dead in the eye and said, I'm glad I broke your stupid computer. You know what, Ethan? I said, pulling out my phone. I'm glad you said that, because now I have you on tape admitting you destroyed my property on purpose. The color drained from Jessica's face. You can't record us without permission. It's a one-party consent state, I replied. I can record any conversation I'm part of, and this conversation just became evidence. After they left, I sat in my office staring at my dead laptop. But first, I had one more piece of business to handle. Remember how Ethan was obsessed with his online gaming? Kid spent hours every day on Discord, Minecraft servers, and Roblox, bragging to his little internet friends about how cool and European he was. Well, turns out when you live in someone's house for 9 months, they learn your passwords. Especially when you're an 11-year-old who uses the same password for everything. Ethan Berlin, 2023. Because of course he did. So before I called my lawyer, I logged into every single one of his gaming accounts. His Minecraft server, where he was some kind of moderator, posted a confession message from his account. Hey everyone, I'm actually just a spoiled American kid who destroys other people's property and lies about it. I've been pretending to be cool, but I'm actually living with my uncle because my parents are broke. Also, I'm probably going to be expelled from school soon, LOL. But the masterpiece was his Roblox account. Kid had spent hundreds of dollars of his parents' money building this elaborate avatar and virtual mansion. I sold everything. Every rare item, every piece of virtual real estate, every cosmetic upgrade. Converted it all to Robux and donated it to random noobs with a message. From a spoiled brat who learned consequences exist. Then I changed his username to Spoiled Brat Ethan and his bio to I destroy other people's property because my parents never taught me consequences. By the time they figured out what happened, his entire online reputation was nuked. All his little gaming buddies had screenshots. The kid who thought he was hot shit was now a laughingstock across multiple platforms. Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying? Beyond measure. The best part? When Jessica tried to get the accounts restored, the gaming companies said since the passwords were accessed from the same household, they couldn't prove it was unauthorized access. The kid learned real quick that actions have consequences, even in virtual worlds. Now I thought that was the end of it. Family drama resolved, toxic people removed. Time to move on with my life. But I'd seriously underestimated Jessica's capacity for petty revenge and her complete inability to accept responsibility for anything. About a week after they moved out, I started getting weird messages from friends and coworkers. "Hey man, saw that post about you. That's screwed up. Is everything okay?" Someone saying some pretty serious stuff. Turns out Jessica had decided to wage psychological warfare through the most Karen weapon of all, social media. She'd posted this massive manifesto on Facebook, Instagram, and get this, LinkedIn. Because apparently nothing says professional networking like airing family drama to potential business contacts. The post was a masterpiece of manipulation. She painted herself as a struggling mother trying to rebuild her life after financial hardship, only to be violently attacked by her unstable brother-in-law who had anger management issues and physically assaulted her innocent child over material possessions. She'd somehow spun the whole thing into a broader social commentary about toxic masculinity in the Midwest and how capitalism has corrupted family values. Because nothing says deep social analysis like turning your personal drama into a think piece about society. She posted photos of Ethan's bruises. Apparently, the kid had scraped his arm falling off his bike earlier that week, but Jessica presented it as evidence of my violent assault. She included screenshots of our family text messages, carefully edited to remove context and make me look like a monster. The post went viral, at least among suburban moms and online activists who live for this kind of outrage porn. Hundreds of shares, thousands of comments calling me a child abuser and a psychopath. Random strangers were sending me death threats through DM. My favorite comment was from some mom in Oregon. "This is exactly why I don't trust men around children. The violence is always just under the surface." But here's where Jessica's psychology degree really showed. She tagged my workplace, tagged my clients, tagged local businesses I frequent. She was trying to destroy my reputation and livelihood. She even started a GoFundMe for therapy expenses for Ethan's trauma and legal fees to protect our family from future violence. The description read like a domestic violence survivor story, complete with stock photos of sad children and statistics about abuse. My phone was blowing up with angry messages. My work email was flooded with people demanding I be fired. Some local mommy blogger even wrote an entire article about me titled, "The Hidden Epidemic of Family Violence, One Mother's Brave Story." Jessica was eating it up. She kept posting updates about how overwhelming the support was, how she was just trying to protect her son, and how she hoped her story would raise awareness about domestic violence. But then Jessica made the same mistake that always trips up liars and manipulators. She got greedy. See, Jessica had gotten so caught up in her victim narrative and the attention that she started embellishing, adding details that weren't true, claiming I'd threatened them multiple times, that there was a pattern of abuse, that I'd been drinking heavily the night it happened. She posted another update claiming that Dad had enabled the violence and that she was considering legal action against the entire family for creating an unsafe environment for children. That's when I realized this wasn't just social media drama anymore. This was an attempt to destroy my life and possibly put me in jail. So I did what any rational person would do when facing false accusations. I posted the video, not just on my personal social media accounts, but everywhere Jessica had posted about me. I created a simple post with the security footage attached. Since Jessica has decided to lie publicly about what happened, here's the actual video evidence of her son deliberately destroying my property and giving me the middle finger in my own home. This is what she's calling innocent child behavior. But I didn't stop there. I posted the audio recording of Ethan admitting he was glad he broke my stupid computer. I posted screenshots of the text messages Jessica had edited, showing the full context she'd removed. I posted photos of my destroyed laptop and receipts showing how much it cost. Then I posted the best part. A compilation video of Jessica's social media posts from Berlin, showing her bragging about their entrepreneur lifestyle while living off investor money, calling herself an expat business consultant while unemployed, and posting photos of Ethan in expensive restaurants while claiming they were building their empire. The caption read, "This is the woman claiming financial hardship while refusing to pay for her son's deliberate destruction of my property. Same woman who spent 4 years posting luxury lifestyle content while burning through other people's money." Notice a pattern? The response was immediate and brutal. Within hours, Jessica's post had gone from viral sympathy magnet to viral cautionary tale about the dangers of believing everything you read on social media. Comments that had been supporting her were now calling her a liar and a fraud. People were sharing the video with captions like, "This is why you should always get the full story," and "Another fake victim exposed." The mommy blogger who'd written the article about me published a retraction with the title, Why We Need to Verify Stories Before Signal Boosting. Them. A lesson in media literacy. But the absolute best part? The GoFundMe. Once people realized Jessica had been lying, they started demanding refunds. The platform investigated and discovered she'd raised almost $2,200 from strangers who thought they were helping a domestic violence survivor. When the truth came out, GoFundMe not only refunded everyone's money, but banned Jessica from the platform for fraud. She tried to delete everything, but the internet is forever. Screenshots of her lies were everywhere, along with the video evidence proving she'd fabricated the whole story. Jessica went from victim advocate to cautionary tale in about 48 hours. But I still wasn't done, because attempted character assassination isn't a game I play halfway. Here's something most people don't know about homeowners insurance. It covers malicious destruction of property by guests. And I had video evidence of a minor deliberately destroying $2,800 worth of equipment while staying in the insured residence. The insurance company agreed. They cut me a check for the full replacement value, then exercised their right of subrogation to recover the money from the responsible parties, which meant Brandon and Jessica were now being sued by a major insurance company for $2,800 plus legal fees. But that was just the opening move. Remember how Ethan had been enrolled in the local elementary school? I had a conversation with the principal about my nephew's behavioral problems, mentioned the video of him destroying property and flipping off adults, suggested they might want to review their security footage. Turns out there had been several incidents. Ethan had been caught on camera stealing from other kids' backpacks, deliberately breaking classroom supplies, and even spitting in a teacher's coffee cup. The school board voted to expel him. Meanwhile, Michelle and Robert were discovering what it was like to live with my brother's family. Within 2 weeks, they were asking Brandon and Jessica to find somewhere else to stay. Something about Ethan destroying Robert's fishing gear, and Jessica helping herself to Michelle's prescription medications. And here's the kicker. Once the video evidence went public, several of Jessica's former supporters started coming forward with their own stories about her manipulation and lies. Turned out this wasn't her first attempt at playing the victim for sympathy and money. A woman from their Berlin expat community posted about how Jessica had run the same scam there, claiming her husband was abusive to get free housing and donations, only to be exposed when someone discovered the bruises she'd photographed were actually from a kickboxing class. Jessica's reputation was completely destroyed. Every Google search of her name brought up the video and articles about her false domestic violence claims. She was effectively unemployable in any field that required credibility or trust. Diane lasted 3 weeks before she came back to Dad's house, hat in hand, asking for forgiveness. Dad's response was simple. You made your choice. Now live with it. She ended up moving in with her sister in Lansing. The best part, the part that still makes me smile, came 6 months later. Brandon had to declare bankruptcy to deal with the insurance lawsuit and legal fees. They ended up moving back to Berlin, not because they had opportunities there, but because it was the only place they could afford to live. Jessica's social media presence never recovered. Every platform she tried to rebuild on, someone would post the video within days. She couldn't escape the consequences. Last I heard, Jessica was working as a hotel maid, and Brandon was delivering food on a bicycle. Ethan was enrolled in a German school with strict discipline policies and zero tolerance for American-style entitlement. The kid who thought consequences were optional was about to get a PhD in accountability, European style. A year later, I'm living in my own place downtown. Nice apartment, great view, zero tolerance for disrespect. Dad and I have dinner once a week, and our relationship is stronger than it's ever been. I got a New Year's card from Berlin last month. It was from Brandon, and it was just 2 words. You win. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just an admission that the game was over, and I'd played it better.